Howdy folks, this discussion is going to be all about the Moore-Penrose Pseudo-Inverse, or what is more just commonly referred to as the pseudo-inverse. As per usual, at the GitHub link in the description you will find a Jupyter notebook with all the code used in this video plus some additional written notes on the pseudo-inverse. But without further ado, let's discuss the pseudo-inverse. Okay folks, before I introduce you to the pseudo-inverse, allow me to quickly say two things, the first of which will hopefully clear up any confusion you might have through watching this, and the second might actually spark a little bit more interest for you in the pseudo-inverse. First, there are two common forms of notation for this pseudo-inverse used out in the wild. I happen to use the A dagger notation, A being a matrix, and there's also the plus notation. They both mean the same thing. They both refer to this pseudo-inverse that we're going to talk about. Now, what might actually interest you a little bit more in the pseudo-inverse actually comes from the history of the development of the pseudo-inverse. I only mention this because it interested me, or it sparked my interest a little bit more anyways. And that comes really from the formal name for the pseudo-inverse, with it being known as the Moore-Penrose Pseudo-Inverse. Moore, or Eliakim Hastings Moore, E.H. Moore for short, was an American mathematician who developed this pseudo-inverse in the year 1920. Now, 31 years later, another mathematician, this one being a Swedish mathematician, independently reinvented the pseudo-inverse, and his name was Arne Bjarhammer. He specialized in geodesics. Now, to anybody who does general relativity type stuff, maybe you come from a physics background, that should sound very familiar with you, and now you might make a connection between geodesics and general relativity and the Penrose part of this Moore-Penrose pseudo-inverse, because 4 years after that, in 1955, Roger Penrose, the legendary Nobel Prize-winning physicist, reinvented this pseudo-inverse again. And that's why we call it the Moore-Penrose pseudo-inverse, which is kind of interesting. Moore was the kind of like the first guy who came and developed the idea for it, and Penrose just came in and completely reinvented it. And it's wild to think that a guy who I happened to watch win the Nobel Prize in physics while I was a student, who is still alive and who you can go look up podcasts and listen to podcasts where he is a guest on some of these podcasts, is the guy who developed this pseudo-inverse, or in part developed this pseudo-inverse that we're going to talk about. Alrighty, so I think the best place to really introduce you, or the best way to introduce you to the pseudo-inverse, is by deriving it in a way. And we'll start here with our old friend, the linear system. Almost every single discussion I've done in one way or another related to linear algebra or numerical linear algebra ties back to this linear system. And if I were to ask you analytically, what is the simplest, easiest way of solving for our x vector in this linear system, or just solving the linear system analytically, quickly, on a whiteboard, what would you say the fastest way of doing that would be? Okay, we're not going to mess with Gaussian elimination, matrix decompositions, anything like that. The simplest way of doing that, just in two quick lines of math, and one of them is honestly kind of redundant, would be to just left multiply both sides by A inverse, and then you're left over with our solution, which is that our x vector is equal to A inverse B. But this isn't necessarily as simple as you might think, because we have to look at this and say, well, is A invertible? So before we even solve anything in this way, you'd have to preset that, okay, this only works if A is invertible, or after the fact you could say this works supposing that A is invertible. And especially if you want to do this in a numerical case, that's really just not possible, because you're going to have to check to see whether or not A is invertible or not, and then actually compute A inverse if it is invertible. And so there's just way more steps in this than you might otherwise want to do. And so how can we kind of get around this? How can we do the same thing here but kind of get around all of this? And we can do that with a very useful matrix decomposition known as the singular value matrix decomposition, otherwise known as the SVD. I'll shorten it quite a bit throughout this discussion. But the SVD here is the topic of my most recent video, on numerical linear algebra before this. You can check that out if you want a bit of a refresher. But the great thing about the singular value decomposition of the SVD is that every single matrix, regardless of dimensions or whatnot, will have a SVD. You could decompose any matrix with the SVD. And just to give you a bit of a refresher on that, our U and our V transpose matrices contain our left and right singular vectors. And when we compute U by U transpose or U transpose by U, or V by V transpose or V transpose by V, we get back the identity matrix, implying to us that U transpose is U inverse and V transpose is V inverse. And that's because these matrices are unitary, orthogonal, orthonormal. There's a whole bunch of different vocabulary that you could use to describe these, but this is kind of the key property that we are going to leverage in this, just like we've leveraged it in many other, the whole concept of orthonormal columns, orthonormal matrices, if you want to call it that. The sigma matrix, of course, is a square matrix. It's also a diagonal matrix, which contains our singular values along the diagonal ordered from greatest to least, and all those values are positive. So inverting this is also fairly straightforward because it's diagonal, especially for working with strictly real numbers. And so now, let's suppose that we want to solve our linear system again, ax equals b here. But now, before we do that, we will decompose A with the SVD. We'll decompose it with the singular value decomposition. So we get U sigma V transpose X is equal to B. Now let's suppose we want to take the same exact approach to solving this analytically on a whiteboard, okay? It's just as simple as left multiplying both sides first by U transpose, which is U inverse, which leaves us with sigma V transpose X is equal to U transpose B. We've got two more matrices that we've got to do. So we're going to go ahead and take care of sigma. Now, again, sigma inverse is fairly straightforward to get because, again, sigma is square and diagonal. So if we're dealing with strictly real numbers, which in many cases we are, inverting sigma is just as simple as inverting every individual value along the diagonal. And so, we'll left multiply both sides by sigma inverse, and we're left with V transpose X is equal to sigma inverse U transpose B. One last matrix to go, and so we'll left multiply both sides by V, and then we'll get our solution here, which is that X is equal to V sigma inverse U transpose B. That's our solution, and this matrix product of V sigma inverse U transpose is what we call the pseudo-inverse or a dagger. Now, rather annoyingly, I cannot get the dagger to render effectively with the software that I'm using for this right now, so we're going to actually dive into the Jupyter Notebook from here on out to talk about this. And that's also rather convenient because we're going to dive into the code and start working with the pseudo-inverse to see how this would work, or if it actually works in the real world, if we want to solve a linear system like this by using this pseudo-inverse. So as you can see right here, just like what I showed you from before, a dagger is going to be our pseudo-inverse, and it's defined as V sigma inverse U transpose from our singular value matrix decomposition, and it is very powerful. We call it a pseudo-inverse because it's going to act just like an inverse, but not be the inverse. And so let's explore this in the real world right here with this first block of code right here. You can see from the beginning, I'm importing numpy because we're going to use the numpy linalg package, and I've defined this first function here called pseudo-inverse. And what it's going to do is it's just going to go through that same process that we just described from before. So it's going to take some A matrix. The first thing that we're going to do, the first notable thing that we're going to do is we're going to use the numpy linalg SVD function right here to compute a singular value decomposition for the matrix that we pass in. Then in this block of code right here, what we're going to do is we are just going to start inverting all of those singular values, and then right here we slide them all into a diagonal matrix to get sigma inverse. Then it's just as simple as computing V transpose by sigma inverse, V transpose transpose, so just V, by sigma inverse by U transpose, and then returning that matrix product, which is going to be the pseudo-inverse or a dagger in this case, or just something a matrix denoted with that dagger right there. And now to actually test out and see if this works or how this works, we're going to generate a random 5x5 square A matrix with values between -1,000 and 1,000. We're going to pass that matrix into the pseudo-inverse from before and compute a dagger. We'll print both those out, and then we're going to try to compute A dagger by A to see exactly what happens. And so when we run that code, what you'll see right here is you can see our A matrix right up here at the top. It is definitely square. It's 5 by 5. A dagger is also 5 by 5. And when we compute A dagger by A, we get back the identity matrix, which is what you would expect if you were to compute an actual inverse. So this is having inverse-like behavior. We're not doing any checks or anything else to determine whether or not A is actually invertible. We're just computing the SVD, in the process of computing this pseudo-inverse, and then using that pseudo-inverse, and it behaves just like the inverse, without it actually being the inverse. Now let's test the same thing out here, but with the overdetermined system, or with an overdetermined system. So we're going to randomly generate a new matrix B in this case. This one's going to be 6 by 4, so definitely overdetermined, with values between -1,000 and 1,000. We're going to pass that again into the pseudo-inverse, print all of that out. We're going to compute B dagger by B to see what type of behavior this has. An overdetermined system like this is almost certainly not going to be invertible. And so here's our B matrix, definitely overdetermined, 6 by 4, again, like I mentioned. B dagger is 4 by 6 because it's going to have the opposite of the same dimensions. And when we compute B dagger by B, we get a 4 by 4 square matrix that is the identity matrix, okay? And so you can see that for a matrix that is definitely not invertible, when we use B dagger, or the pseudo-inverse, we get something that behaves very, very similarly to an actual inverse. Hence why it's called pseudo-inverse, but we still have one example to go through. Here we have an example for the underdetermined case, where we're going to generate a 3 by 5 underdetermined matrix right here called C. We're going to call that C. We're going to compute C dagger with the pseudo-inverse function like I did from before, and then we're going to compute C dagger by C to see what happens. So as you can see, here is our C matrix. It is 3 rows by 5 columns as we expect, so definitely underdetermined. C dagger is right there as well, and you'll notice something particularly interesting when we compute C dagger by C. We get a 5 by 5 almost perfect identity matrix, with the exception of something in this last spot. This is why I say that we get inverse-like behavior from the pseudo-inverse without it actually being an inverse, because suppose in a perfect world that this underdetermined system is actually invertible, okay? We would expect to get the identity matrix back out, but in this case we don't, because we have this extra 0 right here. And so we get inverse-like behavior without it actually being an inverse. Now, obviously, the big benefit of this comes with regard to the linear system again. Here's our friend, the linear system, and if I were to ask you again now, what is the simplest way to solve this analytically, without caveats or anything else like that, how would you solve such a linear system? Well, you'd have to say to use the pseudo-inverse, because we don't have to ask any of the questions that we have to ask when we're doing conventional matrix inversion. We would just left multiply both sides by A dagger in this case, and say that the solution is, for x is equal to A dagger B, which is just the pseudo-inverse, times our B vector. But let's just not take my word for it. Let's test this out right here and solve some linear systems. We're going to use our A matrix from before and A dagger that we computed from before, because this, notebook just runs all together, all in one. So we're going to generate a random vector B1 in this case, so that we can solve AX is equal to B1, and we're going to solve it with the pseudo-inverse, just like we saw right here. One of the big benefits, of course, is that whether we're doing it analytically on a whiteboard or whether we are doing it numerically, the same general thought process works for both. Just compute the pseudo-inverse, left multiply by both sides, and it works. So in this case, we're going to compute x1 right here by computing A dagger by B1, and then to check our solution, we're going to compute B1 minus AX1 to see how that works. And when we run that code, our B vector in this case is what you can see right here. When we compute B minus AX, we get a vector with values on order of 10 to the negative 13. Now remember that this is numerical mathematics, and so you're going to have to look at context and things like that to determine how many decimals are significant to you, whether or not rounding is appropriate or not. But for this specific case, in this context, 10 to the minus 13 is effectively 0, so we could round all of these to be 0 and say that, yeah, this matches up really, really well, and that using the pseudo-inverse numerically to solve a linear system actually does work. And so now jumping to the underdetermined case, we're going to do the same thing, but for our underdetermined system that we generated from before, so our C matrix and C dagger, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to solve for x using C dagger and B3, this B3 matrix that we're randomly generating, and we're going to check B minus CX to see if it actually works. And so here is our B vector from before, And when we compute b minus cx, you end up seeing, again, a bunch of values on very, very, with a ton of decimal places on order of 10 to the negative 13, 10 to the negative 14. And so effectively, again, in the context of what we have going on right now, we can round these to be 0 effectively, meaning that this checks out. So our pseudo-inverse is solving a linear system in a very similar way to how a conventional inverse would if the matrix was invertible. The benefit is we don't have to ask any of these questions. We're going to do the same thing here. We're generating a random vector, b2 in this case, but instead of trying to outright solve this overdetermined system, we can't really do the same exact thing for an overdetermined system because overdetermined systems don't always have perfect solutions. As a matter of fact, most of the time they don't have perfect solutions. That's why we have the method of least squares or least squares solutions. I've done a whole separate video on that. You can check that out if you want. But basically, with most overdetermined solutions, the best that we're going to be able to, with overdetermined systems rather, the best that we're going to be able to get is we are going to get a solution that reproduces a projection of our b vector on the column space of our matrix. So we're going to use our b vector and b dagger from, I'm sorry, not b vector. We're going to use the b matrix and b dagger from before, use this b2 vector to create our linear system, then we're going to solve it, and right here, you can see we're going to compare the result to the numpy linalg least squares function, or the results of the numpy linalg least squares function, rather, and show exactly what happens there. So as you can see, we have our randomly generated b vector right here, and we're computing x, and we're going to compare x from the pseudo-inverse to x from the numpy linalg least squares function, and you can see that when we compute that difference, we get a bunch of values on order of 10 to the negative 16, and also just 0. And so you can see that this works perfectly for producing the least squares solution. And so, folks, that is the big benefit of the pseudo-inverse, or a dagger, as you can see right here in this case. It allows us a really simple, easy, and straightforward way to do matrix inversion or have similar behavior to matrix inversion without actually doing matrix inversion and having to ask all the questions that we need to ask when it comes to working with inverse matrices. Hence why it's called the pseudo-inverse. It does almost everything that an inverse might do, but without it actually being the inverse. And therefore, we can apply it to matrices that are not invertible. And especially in the case of the overdetermined system, it doesn't provide us a solution, but it provides us the least squares solution. And folks, this is just one really powerful example of where the SVD, or singular value matrix decomposition, comes in to be as powerful as it really is. All this would not be possible without it. But folks, that is the pseudo-inverse. It is very powerful, it is very useful, and it highlights one really key use case from the SVD. So if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, do not hesitate to let me know. Thank you all very much for watching. Hopefully you found this useful, helpful, or informative, or even entertaining. I don't know. It's entirely up to you. But thank you again very much for watching, and I hope to see you all again next time.